Everyone out there is telling you to go faster, automate more, chain more agents, remove yourself from the loop. And the people doing this are producing the worst AI output I've ever seen. Here's what nobody in the AI space wants to admit. The people getting the best results from Claude, from ChatGPT, from any of these tools, they're deliberately slower. They have friction in their workflows, and it's not because they don't know better, it's because they do. I'm calling this engineering friction, and it's a skill, probably the most underrated one in the entire AI space right now. So let me explain what I mean. The default advice you get from every AI influencer is automate everything, build an agent for it, take yourself the process, and the logic sounds airtight, right? If AI can do it, why would you waste your time doing it manually? But here's what actually happens when you follow that advice. You get slop. You get an output that technically answers the question, but has no edge, no taste, no actual quality to it. And the reason is simple. You removed the one thing that was making the output good, which was your judgment. And I think the best analogy here is a drill, right? I used this in my context word video too. You can check that out somewhere on the screen. You won't close your eyes and use a drill and expect a good result, but that's exactly what people are doing with AI. They set up automation, they close their eyes, they let it run, and then they're sharp that the output is bad. Engineering friction is the opposite of that. It's deliberately keeping your eyes open at the points that matter. I want to show you 3 examples from my actual workflows where I intentionally slow down and why the output is dramatically better. So as a builder, of course, number 1 will be plan mode. For development. Planning in itself is the friction in this example, right? So I spend 80% of my time in plan mode. I iterate 4 or 5 times before I let AI write any of the code. And I, read the plan line by line, look at the assumptions, restructure the approach, reject, what doesn't make sense, because often it depends on how much input you give in the beginning, but often it will be like 80% there. Like everything with AI, right? So reject what looks bad. And then when I actually go to the other 20%, which is having it implement the feature, I look at what it's doing. I don't spin up 10 things at the same time. I look at what it's doing, the diff, so what changes it makes, and I stir it in real time. So if there is something where it goes off the rails, I will be there to catch that, and I will just write a message. Did this, no, do it this other way, because it makes no sense for whatever reason. And then that gives you a drastically better result than letting it go off for half an hour and then having to rework the approach a bunch of times, because depending on the feature's complexity, that will require reworking a lot of files and a lot of changes that need to be made. And obviously writing is the slowest operation here, right? So with all this or whatever, if you go in and you need to rewrite a lot of the code base, then that will take a while. One note here, I use Claude Code mostly, but Codex is much better when it comes to steering. The UX is also just much better, right? But yeah, I think here in this workflow, planning and then supervising and also of course reviewing, even though I don't spend as much time reviewing because I'm kind of reviewing on the fly, and it's less overwhelming because I'm looking at it, not line by line, but batch by batch essentially. And so then I already know what it did along the way. Then there's content. So I also, do some YouTube content or LinkedIn content. I mean, as you know, because you're on YouTube watching me, but essentially all this stuff here is me. This is just PowerPoint slides within Cowork, and all this stuff is me collecting context to make slides, make deliverables, make scripts, whatever. And I don't think value in writing is the process of writing. I think there's some value in it in terms of clarity and shaping your thoughts. But for me, the most value is in just dumping my brain, adding my view that I have on certain things, adding that to the conversation. And writing for me is kind of busy work, right? So then putting that into words that make sense, coherent, especially with LinkedIn, it's often just like templated bullshit. I mean, even the real posts are just templated bullshit. So why would I sit down and write templated bullshit if I could just have the thing do it for me? But of course, I don't want to go there and say, write a thought leadership post on AI, because that's what I'm supposed to be an expert in, right? So then you're taking the authority away, which makes no sense, because you have to add your view, your judgment, your take, and that's what makes the context, and that's what you need to engineer. So from all our opinions, the draft comes back. I have a knowledge base that has examples of how I write stuff or what style I use or voice. And then, it's not enough to be more opinionated. I think you'll often end up with crap. Ultimately, those are the steps. So it's 80-20. Spend 80% of your time on the context engineering and spend 20% of your time on the editing. All right. And then number 3, essentially strategy. There is a lot of work on strategy out there. There's a lot of books, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of crap. I feel like people that do strategy can't even agree on what strategy is themselves, between them. And what I like to use AI for is I have created a bunch of different lenses that are essentially different people, how they think about a certain topic, right? So there's Eric Ries, which is lean startup. There's Alt, which is good strategy, bad strategy. There's Sun Tzu, Art of War, and they critique my thinking. But I spend a lot of time in the beginning to of course think it through, engineer the context. What are we trying to do? Where are we going? Right? What are the choices that we have to make? Because strategy is about making choices, right? So essentially it's doing, and then I have AI feedback that, and then the AI feedback will often be good, while it will also often be complete garbage. It will just be some outlandish thing, where, I could do that, but makes no fucking sense. So why would I do that, right? So yeah, it's possible, but it's not feasible. And so that again is if I would just automate myself away here and just get that in there, then I'm ending up with a document that just sounds crazy and it sounds way too much. And essentially it's a failure in itself not to decide, what the strategy is, because that is your decision to make. You can't ask AI to do that. And that's the whole thing with Pulsia or whatever, this complete automated business thing. I think a lot of the work, if you look at it at a business level, needs to go into strategy, which is your playing field, where to play and how to win, where are you playing, who are you competing with, and what is your unique edge. And if your unique edge is to use AI, which everybody has access to, then you've already lost. So makes no fucking sense. Sounds cool, sounds fun. It's fun. It's an experiment, you can try it out, but it's not gonna save you or anything. So I think these are the 3 things where I think there's a clear idea also across different verticals, right? So I'm doing all of these as I'm cross-functional, but some people will just do development, some people will just do content writing, others will do more strategic thinking. So that's why I picked these 3 examples. And now a bit more to the underlying point. So here's the bigger picture, I think, of what's happened. The AI ecosystem and AI influencers in general have just created this narrative that efficiency is the only thing that matters. Just automate more, go faster, remove humans. And this is being pushed by people who sell automation tools. Not very shocking, but yeah, it's, as always, incentives, right? So look behind the curtain. What are the incentives of who's talking? And the people that are selling the drill, to get back to the example, are the ones that tell you to close the eyes and drill faster, which again, not surprising, right? So what the people that I see that are successful, they take the time to build this friction that we talked about into their process. They know where to slow down and when, and they treat this knowledge as a skill. And it is a skill. It's pattern recognition, and after enough reps, you just develop this intuition of where AI output needs human checkpoints and where it doesn't. And that intuition is worth more than any sort of automation framework. People are so obsessed with frameworks, but they want to think anything for themselves, and the tool is never gonna save you. You're gonna save yourself using the tool. I get why people are doing it, right? So we're lazy, our brains are lazy, we're wired for the path of least resistance. And when I have a tool that can produce a plausible answer in 10 seconds, and I can just let it do that, and I can get that dopamine hit, feel productive, move on to the next thing. But this is the trap, right? You skip the planning because it feels slow. You skip the context engineering because it's easier to just say, write this post. You skip the lenses that I was sharing, reading critiques of your strategy. because you already have the output. Like, why would you iterate, right? And why would you challenge it? And I think that that's just human nature. But ultimately, this is short-term gain, long-term pain. So you end up sounding like everyone else. Your strategy falls apart, when reality comes hitting you or comes knocking at the door. And yeah, short-term gain, long-term pain every time. And why call it a skill is because it's not natural, right? You have to actively fight your brain's preferences for going the easy way. Yeah, you just have to train yourself to not just let AI do its thing. You need to overwrite the moments that matter. And ultimately, there's a paradox at the core here as well, which is, the more you give in to this laziness, the more you automate away your judgment, the less your judgment will develop. And the less judgment you have, the worse your automations get. It's just this downward spiral or reinforcing feedback loop. Forcing in a good way. And you end up fast, but you end up mediocre. And you can't even tell that you're mediocre because you don't know the difference between mediocre and good output because you've lost your judgment. So friction is the only way to break that spiral and how to keep your taste. So friction is how you break that spiral and how you keep your taste sharp. All right. See you in the next video. Cheers.